Again, welcome to our second installment of Arise, where we will be talking about finances. I want to thank everyone who has come through tonight. I think this promises to be exciting, and I mean, part of what we do, why we have Arise, is so that we could equip ourselves with some of the most hottest topics or the things that impact our lives every day in society. So I've been having a conversation with my kids about, generally I try to teach them about finances here and there. And then they got introduced to the concept of a credit card. So I was trying to explain what a credit card is for and why you should have one, and if you should have one, and how you should use one, you know. So I explained to my daughter that what a credit card is you are borrowing money against future income. If, for example, I give you 50 Rand a month, you could potentially borrow 150 from me with a promise to pay me using your 50 bucks. So she understood the concept. Okay, cool, that's fine. So I can borrow 150 today to buy whatever I want to buy today. That sounds like a great idea. So she said, okay, cool, no, that's fine. So we're visiting my aunt, their aunt, my sister. And they love her a lot. She buys them lots of gifts. She said, you know, Papa, we never buy Auntie any gifts. Can we get her a gift this time? Because he's always buying everybody gifts and we don't. I said, so what do you suggest we buy her? Can we get her an extra credit card? But who must pay for that credit card? He said, you will pay for that credit card. But anyway, can we get her an extra credit card so that she can buy us more gifts, you know? That's very selfish. But I mean, it gets the idea. And that's not how we want to manage our finances. But I mean, they say money makes the world go round. And I suppose most of what consumes us is our thoughts about money. How do we spend? How do we make? And as people of faith, or even not as people of faith, what often consumes us is how we steward what we have, how we use it meaningfully for ourselves, for our families, for the greater good of society. And that is part of what we'll discuss tonight, is how do we personally manage our finances, especially in the times that we live in. I think it is some of the toughest times that we live in today, where, you know, prices are going up, income is reducing. How do we meaningfully use what we have? How do we steward what we've been blessed with? And that's what we're going to discuss tonight. And we've been blessed with our esteemed guests seated up here. I'll introduce them from right to left to right. At the far end there, we've got Terence. Terence is an entrepreneur focusing on financial literacy. I think he built his career and developed his managerial skills at Tiger Brands, where he spent over 20 years, and then went into financial services as a financial planner until he decided, where he saw a gap in the market, to get into the financial literacy space. And that's where he started Vault, which is value-added literacy, lifestyle trading. Sorry, his passion is to inspire and build confidence across all of sectors of society. And Terence believes that every working person in South Africa has the ability to steward their finances to their best ability. But he also believes that it's not about how much money you make, but how well you steward your finances. That's Terence. Can we give him a round of applause? Thank you, Terence. And then we have Olivia. Olivia is an actuarial science graduate who specializes in quantitative analysis. She's been in banking for 5 years, right? Yeah, dealing with credit risk, market risk, and operational risk. She's passionate about people, music, and finances. Thank you for coming. And then we have youth. It's always good to have youth and diversity of views. We believe in young people. Claire is a third-year LLB student at Wits. She is a youth and worship intern at God First Church, Parkhurst, and Josie East. When not studying case law, she runs a pet and house sitting company, which has been slowly growing for the last 2 years. Thank you, Claire. And then we have Johan. Johan Landman is a director and shareholder of Omega Capital, a proudly independent wealth management business. He's one of small, tight-knit team of planners who partner with clients in making decisions about their lives, their money, and the aim of achieving balance. Balance encompasses a variety of factors, The list is as long as people's lives are unique. Johannes enjoys reading, the company of friends, beloved family, a good glass of wine, which we have, and an exchange of ideas. He tries to balance his own life and acknowledges it is a changing, dynamic journey, not a destination reached. Thank you, Johan. Can we give him a round of applause? Thank you. Sorry? Menti, I want to remind you as well, we have Menti. So if you look at the placards, they have a QR code on it, even the one that was sent via WhatsApp. You can simply scan it with your camera and click on the link, and that's how you can send us questions directly. Please use that. I think it's the easiest form we can use for questions. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bongani. I think you can also, on the screen is the code, so even if you just want to navigate to menti.com and then pop in that code. So you can put in questions if you would like you can ask the question directly at a later point. So if you'd like that, then just add your name into the question. But if you'd like to remain anonymous but still ask the question, go ahead. And we will also have an opportunity for live questions that you can ask the speakers if you don't feel like being digital tonight. Yeah. So yes, thank you, Bongani. Thank you to our speakers. I'm looking forward to this discussion. So that was a great start. And I wonder if maybe at the beginning of our discussion, you can help us to understand why managing our personal finances has become so much more difficult, particularly in the last 3 years, and why the cost of living has increased so sharply. So we're looking for a macro picture, I think, here to begin with. So Olivia, can I ask you?
All right, cool. So the question was, why has the cost of living, it has increased sharply, especially in the past, I think, 12 months. We have seen, the price of sugar has gone from 2 kg brown sugar, it's gone from 29 Rand to 45 Rand, 44.99. And it's even the oil. I think last year, when oil was 90 Rand, that was it being on special. It went all the way to, I think, 130 for 2 liters from like 60 Rand. So I'm just going to be giving an overview of kind of where we're at as a country, almost very similar to where we're at as the world. I think we kind of just follow, we're like 2 steps behind the US. So if anyone is familiar with the economic cycle, we know that there's an expansion, right? So there's 4 stages. There's an expansion, there's a peak, there's a contraction, and then there's a trough, which is like the pits, basically. And where we're at, so let me just explain them. An expansion, it all speaks to growth and how the country or an economy is growing. So an expansion means that, it's doing great, we're expanding. Spending is, increasing, and there's high demand, there's high supply of things, low unemployment rate, slightly low inflation, and just everything is great, everyone is happy, right? And then there's the peak, which means that, okay, it's hit its maximum rate. So we have hit our highest, supply or growth as a country, but it's about to go down. And that's where contraction comes in. So what happens in contraction is things start to look bad, right? Where the unemployment rate is slightly higher, not slightly higher, it's increasing. Inflation is increasing. Everything is poor. People are losing their jobs, so obviously less spending. And then there's the trough, which is the pits, right? So I'm not really too sure where we're at. I'm going to tell you where we're not. So we're not at an expansion. We're definitely not at our peak. We're sitting around our contraction, and a lot of our analysts have predicted about 45% we're about to enter, the 45% chance we're about to enter a recession as a country. So I'm just going to read a few stats. This is not to scare you. This is not to depress you. This is just to say where we're at as a country. I think sometimes we're so ignorant of where we're at, the reality of things. We don't want to know, to hear the facts. And it might be because it's bliss. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes you're just not exposed to some of these things. So I'm going to read 3 important stats. The first one is our unemployment rate. We're currently sitting at 33.56%. That means that 33 out of 100 people that you might be walking past every day do not have an income. Probably have the 350 rand that the government gives them, right? And this has increased by 5% over the last 4 years. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we're currently one of the highest, if not top 3, in the world of unemployment rate. Okay? Then the next stat is our inflation rate. As I mentioned, sugar and oil, right? You remember that. The past 10 years, we've been sitting at around 4.5, 3.5. In 2022, we touched 6.3%, right? Which is really high. And I think it explains why you've had to cut down. We've all had to cut down on some things that we love or that we're used to buying. And then the third thing for homeowners and vehicle owners is the repo rate. The repo rate pre-COVID was sitting at 6. Okay, for those who don't know what a repo rate is, the repo rate is the amount that the South African Reserve Bank borrows, or it's the rate at which they borrow money to financial institutions such as your commercial banks, right? And then that is the price that the commercial bank pays. But the bank will still add. So there's your normal prime rate, which is that repo rate plus 3 or 3.5, and then they will still charge you based on your risk profile, right? So that has gone up. Pre-COVID, we're sitting at 6.5, and then if you remember, there was about, it was decreased by, I think, 4 times by 300 basis points. So it went from 6.5% to 3.5%. So homeowners, if you had a R1 million bond, you would probably be paying 3,000 rand less, right, during COVID. And then in 2022, surprise, April, it just went up and kept going up until now. We went from 3.5 to 7.25. So that is why I'm saying we're sitting in a contraction, because the government is actively trying to decrease spending, but what they're doing, so they're not evil, right? They're not evil people. They're not the enemy. We're not praying against them. What they're doing is, they're trying to actively combat inflation, right? I'm not going to go too deep into the economics, but you can be hopeful that around Q3, Q4, so around October, November, maybe even August, September, we are expecting a decrease. So we are expecting that things are going to get better. So we are going to see probably 25 to 50 basis points increase in March, which isn't great. But from August, September, there is positive outlook. So that is where we are sitting at as an economy. As South Africa, it's not great, but from a macroeconomic standpoint, it is about to get better on a repo rate front and an inflation front. So we are seeing the effects of these starting to take place. So started in April, and right now in this period, we're seeing that, okay, slowly inflation is going down. So yeah, sorry to be the bearer of bad news if you did not know, but it is that, yeah. Cool.
It's nice to know one thing's going to get better at some point. So with all the pressures that we've been speaking about now and that we're facing, how do we then steward our finances responsibly? And Johannes, can I bring you in here? Can you give us some ideas?
I'm so depressed, I'm not sure I have anything for you. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think what we should start by saying is it's tough. And a very wise financial planner I know made the point to me once, staying financially healthy is very much like staying in shape. It is very, very simple on paper. It is absolutely incredibly hard in the real world. Does that make any sense? Okay, so it's very simple. You must consume less than you earn. Johannes, you must eat less calories than you burn. Oh, thanks, Johannes. That's pretty damn hard to do. So how do you steward? I think rule 1 is consume less than you earn, and that's hard. Rule 2 is to us, and this is mathematically supported. The quants person who's the actuary would have probably learned this. If you start from your very first paycheck, putting 15 cents, I hear a grunt of acknowledgement from Terence, that's good, putting 15 cents in each rand into future use bucket, And you can call that a fancy word called investing, and then we can get into how that works and blah, blah, blah. But if you put 15% of your income into an investment for future you are being an incredibly good steward of your finances. That is the Brad Pitt methodology for weight loss. That is the 8-pack of financial health. And it's hard. It's even harder because the 15% is not of the money in your bank account each month. It is of the money you earn pre-tax. So if you earn $100, SARS are probably ripping 30 or 40 of that out of your hands. You're left with 60. I'm very sorry, it's 15 cents of the 60. It's like a quarter of your take-home pay. And that is very hard. And we can talk all night about how you do that. It's very similar to the weight loss thing. There are different diets for different people, and some people do banting and other people do whatever. As long as you get that principle right, you are being a very good steward of your money. Can I give you one more thing? Okay, so my company believes in balance, right? You can't just give to future you. You've also got to put something aside for present you. Because if I tell you guys, you've all got to cut out all the fun in your lives and put all your money into some bucket for some future you, that's just horrible. You're never going to do that. So we would balance future you's 15% with something for present you. And my mum taught me that it's 10%. You choose what works for you. But you must know that at the end of the year, I can go on holiday, or I can buy a new bicycle, or I can send my kids to school, or I can afford it if something goes wrong. And that's the balance you've got to strike, because you've got to put some money in investments for future you, and then you've got to put probably a smaller percentage, up to you, in a bucket for present you. And then you're balancing two very different priorities. That's all I got.
That's great. And would you say somebody who's at the beginning of their career, for example, somebody sort of in the middle of a career and somebody towards the end of the career, would you be giving similar advice, or would you be saying something very different?
The principle is the same. The math will move depending on your circumstances.
Okay.
So if you meet someone who's done nothing for 20 years, he or she sadly needs to play catch up. The 15 probably becomes 30. There are other things you do then. You say to them, can you work longer? Can you find alternative streams of income? Can we sell the big fancy house that you love and all the lovely German cars and put you in a Haval and you can live somewhere affordable, and you got to roll with the punches of the client's life.
And somebody who's in the pension retirement phase of their lives, there's unique expenses there in unique situations. What advice would you give to somebody at that stage?
This is a bit like asking a surgeon, where do you make the first cut when you do a heart operation, right? It's complicated. But the very simple rule of thumb, as you're accumulating assets, I've given you 2 percentages. As you're decumulating assets, the number to hang on to is 5%. So if you start your retirement with 100 Rand, you can have every year 5 Rand of that. And you can adjust that 5 Rand by inflation. If you do that, your money usually lasts, if you're invested properly, 25 to 35 years, which if you're retiring in your 60s and you're living for 20, 30 years is enough. That is very, very hard. I have these conversations daily. Hello, Mr. New Client, can you live on 5%? No, I can't. Okay, where do we start?
Wow.
Catherine, can I just come in?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, great stuff there, Johan. And I just want to bring a different dimension here. And because I think it's a church context, I think I can be at liberty to speak into that. I think if you're already working, you've got to do some major adjustments, but this is specifically going to those that are studying and going into the working world, and then I'll touch those that are actually employed and earning an income. I think we've got to go back in time. Back when I say back in time, what does God intend for man? And I think a lot of us battle with identity. Money is an identity issue. If you understand your identity and you understand your purpose, you and I will be well above in creating a lot of wealth for generations to come. And if I just use an example, when I talk about identity, I hope there's no Jews in the house. I still love you anyway. If you go back to the Jewish nation, they understand the concept of identity. They knew strongly who they were. They knew their purpose. Their purpose was to create generational wealth. That's what's God's plan. Wealth for generations to come. So a quick quick example, the first generation of the Jews were massive traders when they landed in the US. Big-time traders, and I think today we call people that are Maizi, we call them Jews, because they were schemers. The reason why they were schemers, they were trying to save every buck for the next generation. Not for themselves, for the next generation. The second generation became a generation of professionals. All right, so the first generation, schemers saved and made sure the kids go. Education was primary importance. The second generation became professionals. Their job was to take care of their parents, take care of their kids, and education was the primary focus. Okay, and then we go into the third generation. Where we go, yeah. So the third generation, professionals, and obviously the third generation sort of became CEOs of companies. Look around the world and see how many Jew CEOs we have. Now they go back to a biblical principle, okay? And it's that what they actually do is the concept of 10% of tithing, which a lot of us do that, but they've got it right. They've put 10% into education. They put 10% into saving. They put 10% into investments. And 60% is left for living expenses. If I asked you across the room today, are you able to live on 60% of your income? And that's where we get it wrong. We need to go back and do the work. And I'm just going to wrap up here. Identity is a great issue amongst us as humans. We want to buy that SUV. We want to buy this fancy kind of clothing, or you want to go on this fancy holidays. I mean, you go on a holiday, you're coming back in 2-3 years, you're still paying off that credit card debt you've created. So we need to find what is our identity and what's our purpose. Thank you.
That's great. So I think I see such a commonality about the points that you're making. And I think even if somebody doesn't come from a faith-based perspective, many of us do live by principles. And I think the recommendations that you've given would stand for both a faith-based person and a non-faith-based person. But I think there is a particular lens that we bring, that you were speaking about, Terence, as Christians, that we don't believe that the finances are ours. We believe that God has blessed us with them and that our job is to steward them well. So is there, based on what you were saying earlier, but when you look at a breakdown of our income, are we as Christians, should we primarily work towards the splits that you've spoken about, but knowing how tough it is, that how many of us can live on 60% of our income? So is there a commonality, or do you think there should be a slightly different angle that we as Christians take in order to steward our finances responsibly?
I think for me, we have to come clean with ourselves. I think we have to be honest. If you're a couple, sit down together. If you're a single individual, sit down with yourself and realistically look at what Johan said about a budget. Because that's where it starts. That's where stewarding actually starts. You cannot drive to Cape Town if you have not been there before by a vehicle without a roadmap. Basic example. Same with finances. God creates the jobs. God creates the opportunity to create wealth, but He's given you the ability to steward it. And the only way you can be honored by that if you're really taking responsibility of what you currently have. So go back to your budget. Let me tell you, if I can share my personal journey, I was praying back in, I think, 2018. And let me tell you guys, this doesn't come by fasting and praying, because I tried it. And God says, no. It comes with the knowledge. Because I was fasting and praying, because I needed, my income dropped by around about 25K. And I was stressing, because I knew I was not going to meet my monthly commitments. Got some of my friends at church to pray. I went on a fasting and praying, and ain't no money coming. I said, but God, I'm honoring you. I'm serving you. I'm loving you. I'm giving. I wonder why God was ignoring me. Kind of ignoring me. And then, God always wakes you up like 2, 3 in the morning when He wants to speak to you. And what He did, He took me straight to my desk at home and says, I want you to write down your budget. I says, but I got one on my laptop. He says, no, I want you to write one down. Put the laptop away. I want you to write it down. I started to write my budget down. Yes, I needed X amount. I was short by 22 odd K. He says, right. Now the table you learnt in school called the needs and wants. Would you go through, write all your stuff on your budget? Guys, do this tonight. Write all the stuff that's on your budget and go needs and wants. Is it a need or is it a want? Long story short, I drove a beautiful 320D Sport Pack, brand new, paying about 11.5 grand a month. Question was, Terence, is that a need or was it a want? Ooh, identity. What would my friends say? Car had to go. Friend refinanced it, took it away. The helper need to go. Bless her soul, she found another job. I cannot organize that. You know, so it's simple things going through. You got to be hard with yourself if you want to get your expenses from 125%. South Africans live at 125% on average of the income. Means 25% is debt and overdrafts. This is pre-COVID stats. So if you really want to be realistic, it's hard, guys. It's painful. I've been there. I know what it is not to have a dinner. I know what it is to slap some peanut butter on a bread and go to bed. Because God was teaching us a lesson of stewardship. And I was dealt with pride. I wasn't interested what my friend thought about me. I wasn't interested what my colleagues at work thought about me. I didn't care. All I was interested in what God thought about me. And because I honored him, because I became a great steward, I've bounced back over time. Now do I overspend? No. Because I've learned a lesson. So stewarding is so crucial. If I can drive something home today, get your budget working. It does work.
If I can add to that, I think as a student, I would really agree with both of you. It's about aggressive saving and budgeting. I'm not dealing with a car, but I would say I've had to aggressively decide which thing, even resources for school. I don't buy books. I don't buy textbooks because they cost 2,000 Rand. I get online versions and reprint them. And so it is about aggressive. It's sacrificial for your future self. There's no other way about doing it. And then as a student who is full-time studying as well, I would say creating ways of passive income and multiple streams of that so that if one is let go, you have the other one to fall on. Those responsibilities don't fall away, right? Black tax and all those things we're going to get into, but they don't fall away. And so how can we create more spaces to earn whilst also aggressively saving but meeting all those responsibilities? Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, we're definitely going to come back to some of those issues. Maybe, Johannes, just very high level, quickly, what would you want to see in somebody's portfolio or their financial setup that you would go, this is it, things are happening here?
Okay, I think I have the answer to this one simply. I'm going to try. Guys, you can only invest in 4 things. Cash, bonds, property, equity. If you don't know what that is, come see me, I'll tell you. Or ask Greg, he did used to work for Coro. He actually knows quite a lot of this. Cash does not make you rich. Full stop, end of discussion. Bonds do not make you rich. Go away. Property can work, but it is very, very, very complicated. It is very risky. I don't think many consumers understand that when I take £1 million bond out, the bond, my asset's worth a bar, and I owe some third party a bar. I'm on the hook for money I don't have. So property can work because you're geared, but it can also blow up really badly. The one that is just it's just easy is buy equity, buy shares. And the shares you should buy are a low-cost index tracker. Disclaimer, if you come and see us, we will put you in proper stuff that works, right? But if you're going out there to do this on your own, buy a low-cost index tracker of probably half-half global equity and the all share, and maybe rebalance that from time to time. It's what Warren Buffett has told his wife to do with his money when he dies. Buy a low-cost index tracker of equities. Don't do anything fancy. That's all.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So I think Claire touched on this, but also there's an implicit message in what we're talking about, that there's money coming in every month and that we know how much is coming in every month. And many people in South Africa are not in that position, so then don't have a fixed monthly income because they are consultants or freelance workers, maybe creative, working on projects, or yeah, they're just in a life stage, they're taking a career break, or they don't have a fixed income, or they're unemployed, as you were telling us earlier. So a person in that position, what advice would you give to them who's maybe in a coming at financial planning in a slightly different way? Yeah, who would like to take that?
Yeah, so I was talking to a group of property agents. There were 25 of them, and they have this similar type of challenges. It's like every sort of 3 months, if they do sell a property, average 3 months they get paid. And, you know, you've got to bank when the goings are good. All right, if you are that freelancer kind of guy, and you're getting work 1 month, you bang it, the next month eating a dip, and you know the cycle. In the good times, you got to bank. Comes back to again, you can't not have a budget. You got to know my limitations. For example, as a young entrepreneur, it's 10K a month. If you're making 18, make sure you're banking the 8. Okay, and it's a principle, guys. We go back into the Bible and you see Joseph and all the stuff that God was speaking to them. You know, when they knew the famine was coming, Joseph, prepare, plant as much as you can, build larger barns, because it's coming. So we know the cycle. But because we, again, with our mentality, we just keep getting caught up with that. So bank in the good times. When you hit those lows, you've got cash to carry you through. That's just one example I could give to you.
I think I've also been doing some project-based work for the last few years, and the learning curve around managing, setting something aside for tax, you know, if that comes at a later point, and all of those things, I think that's quite a learning curve for entrepreneurs, and I know you as an entrepreneur would know that, yeah. But maybe before we chat about that more, so Olivia, I want to raise the issue of black tax, because that's an additional expectation on people, and I think that also stresses them financially. Can you tell us more about that?
Cool. So I think black tax is not it's not as simple as it sounds. Like you just say, build boundaries, you'll be fine. No. I think it goes back. So from what I've seen in studying it, so I know at least 3 out of 5 young black professionals are supporting in some way their family members, in some way. And you have situations that vary from like an only professional in a family of 7 to someone who maybe there's 5 graduates in the family and, you know, there's mom. But this goes way back. So I think my generation, I call us the bridge builders, right? It's a very awkward season because our parents were either domestic workers, they were hustling, like business, and the way they imagined the office, right, is as long as you have an office, you're earning millions, right? They're like, hi, you drive that car, hi, you made it. You know, so from a young age, from the time you're in high school, when they're, you know, working hard to put you through varsity, it's that like, one day you'll work in the office, you'll pay me back, you know? And we saw our parents struggling for toothpaste, struggling for bathing. You know, there are things now that you're able to buy that was a luxury, right, back then. So there's a lot of history to it, and that's why it's not easy when we speak to maybe a different race, and they just say no, or build boundaries. It's not that easy. But it is that easy, in that is literally the only thing you can do. So I started working in 2018, and we're a family of 4. So thank God, like my siblings, I'm the firstborn. My siblings are very hardworking as well, very inspired. But as I started working, I had this desire to just go full on and provide my family with the life I dreamt of. And what that does is by end of week 1 of payday, so if payday is on the 25th, by 31st, you are either on 0 or you've used your overdraft. And that's why I say it's not as simple as just building boundaries, but it's also as simple as building boundaries. Because one thing, and it's literally just a mind game, sorry, it's not a thing of, you know, there's this tool to battle black tax. Because our parents are also, we love them. Our siblings, we love them. And they'll come with that sob story that will, manipulate your heart and will make you transfer from your savings to your transactional account, So you have to build boundaries. Something that really helped me, and it's been haunting me, is something Michelle Obama said. So she had a talk with, young black women, and she said, we all have this desire to just pour into people, but you can't pour into people of something you don't have. Technically, the money you're spending, you don't have. You don't have it. And you have to get your story straight and I wish if there's any students here, please do not go into your first job thinking, I am rich. You have to go into your first job, start applying the principles of, everything you're hearing here today of, saving 10% or, living on 60%, 85%, whatever it is. Don't go into your job thinking, now it's time to show my enemies. Now your enemies are not there. When it's the 7th and you need to buy noodles, they're not there. And these are real issues. And the problem especially amongst us, I'm going to speak largely to the black community because I'm part of it and I've seen it and I see it every day and I've struggled through it and I believe I've made it out of it. These issues is you find people who on night before payday, they're out and they wait for midnight so they can pay for their bill. And the kind of alcohol they're ordering, it's to show people. There's this syndrome, right? It's called bazotinia band. It means, what will people think? It's a big syndrome in our community. And I think that's it. Once we get over, that syndrome of what will people think, and that syndrome of I must sacrifice, I must die, so people can live. Jesus did that. Jesus has done that. It's now we need to understand where we're at. And I love to learn from my white counterparts. Their families will give them an old 2003 Ford to drive, and they'll drive it until they're managers. Us, in our second month, we have signed 11.5 already. Honestly. But we're afraid to speak about it. We're afraid to let people know I'm drowning in debt. This is what I'm going through. And it starts from there, really. It's being honest with yourself. And everything they've said, budgeting, it's so true. You need to know, where am I? Where am I financially? If, something, what's this, The Last of Us zombies today, do I have the finances to go somewhere safe? You need to be able to say, where am I? Am I acting responsibly for myself? Leave everyone out of it, because you can't give what you don't have. So that's the principle I live by. It's very easy for me to say no now to my family. I give them the best I can, which is, the house, the groceries, the best I can. And once I know that, look, they won't die, everything. There's some issues. Someone will come and say, you need to pay my rent now. You can go and live with your mom for 1 month. Because then when you give them that money, what's going to happen next month? It's a continual issue. So you always think okay, if I'm not here, what's the worst thing that could happen? If they're not going to die, say no. Because then you're going to die. If it's not depression, it's a big thing. Depression, some things are not depression. It's broke. You are just broke. It's not depression. If we're honest, let's be honest. Some things, you are not depressed, you are broke. If you give you 1 million, you'll be happy. So you need to look after yourself first. And I'm saying this, but I'm speaking to myself. Recently, my fiance and we started saving, right? And I'm like, wow, if something happens today, I've got money. I have money. On the 19th, I get paid on the 20th. On the 19th, I'm able to do all my groceries for the next month. And it's a better feeling than showing off to your friends. It's a better feeling than, not looking for an alternate solution rather than here's 5K to pay for your rent, So, build those boundaries and know where you are. I think those are the two big things that I live by, is boundaries and knowing where you're at. Yeah.
Preach. So I actually wanted to I heard lots of affirmation grunts from here as well. But maybe to add on to that is, as a student, so we know in this country that there's such a desire to go to university that's just seen as the ultimate, but there's massive debt and massive funding issues around that. So, as a student as well, what is the impact that kind of a legacy or a heritage of not having, and then the desire to have, where does that place us?
Sure. So I think from my perspective, I have been fortunate enough to, be paid for my education up until my first year. But my family said, from your second year and whatever degree further on, you need to figure it out. And so NSFAS is, for any NSFAS, people on NSFAS, we know it is the worst thing to rely on ever. So you want to figure it out yourself because you don't know. I think my last degree, I got my NSFAS funding at the end of the last year. And so for every day on, it was, is it going to be paid? Am I going to be able to register? And so that's a lot of just emotional stress whilst trying to figure out a degree. But I think, so I've recently got into a student loan. And so my encouragement to students would be keeping your student loan as low as possible. So they're willing to loan you for everything. Like I said, textbooks, a laptop. But if you can borrow that from anyone, if you can, not steal, but I mean steal your friends' textbooks, steal your friend's textbook, because that extra 2,000 Rand that you're adding onto your student loan is going to add up after 3 years, after 5 years. Just off of what Olivia was saying, is not making any emotional decisions around black tax and around your spending. I'm still in university, but I already feel the pressures from my mother and from my brother about tutoring and rent. And so for me, not getting into cycles of unhelpful black tax, for me, I've tried to create spaces where my mom is out of work, I've started a business and now she's coming in as admin versus paying for her rent. That's going to be something I have to do forever versus giving her the opportunity to earn that money for herself, to put it in so that it doesn't become my problem and my brother's problem 10 years from now. So trying to create creative ways of dealing with black tax versus, I'm finally earning money, I can solve all your problems. Here's the car, here's the rent, here's the food, but it's coming next month and the month after, and how do you actively help them in that? Yeah.
That's very wise.
Yeah. Very controversial around black tax, though, I know. It's very emotional.
Yeah.
May I make a personal comment? And it might be, please take it from whence it comes. It's hard to get depressed in our country at the moment. And I listen to you two young ladies speak, and I'm blown away. I'm like, booyah. We have people like you coming through the ranks. We have a shot here, Oaks. Like, thank you. It's really, thank you.
Yeah, it is encouraging, isn't it? But I think just to come back to a point that you were making, Olivia, around, so I have become aware lately of a few cases in which people have been in dire straits, have been in really bad situations financially, but they did not feel able to talk about it. And sometimes they've turned to very negative coping mechanisms and sometimes very tragic ones as a result. And it just got me thinking a lot about what community do we live in and what world do we live in where people don't feel like they can talk about these things, that they don't feel that they can be honest about their financial situation. And I would say particularly in the middle classes, it's maybe more evident in working classes or communities where poverty is obvious, to be able to see that. But in middle classes, we kind of hide because you can look wealthy but not be. And so I'm very concerned about how people deal with these situations. And I just wonder why we're not able to talk about our financial situations. And if the pawpaw has hit the fan, right, things have gone really bad, where do people go, and what tools or what resources exist that they would be able to turn to? Yeah, so.
Cool, so can I take that? I think the main reason why we don't like to speak about it firstly is because it's a situation we got ourselves into, right? So we know that this one's me. It's not like it's a disease, it's me. So we're very aware of that. And there's that shame attached to it that, oh my gosh, I messed up, right? And then secondly, we think we're the only ones who have made these mistakes, right? And it's only when you start speaking to people, you realize, oh my gosh, from the outside, everyone else looks like they're doing so much better. And, it comes from what we see on social media, what we see people smiling, we see the best sides of people. And so we're afraid to speak. But there are tools out there. I know if you're afraid to speak to like a friend, which is fine, I think financial institutions, if it's like a deep debt issue, last resort, right, would be maybe debt review, but like last resort. But it is an option. So there are options out there, even going to speak to creditors and being like, look, this is, instead of ignoring their calls, going there and being like, look, this is the issue. A lot of them are able to cut down. You're able to come to an agreement. So there are those options out there. If it's a credit issue, I think there are options. Go and speak to your creditors. It is a thing that you can go and speak to them and come up with a repayment plan. Also, financial advisors. Going to show someone this is what the holistic picture looks like. I am lost. It's a big step to be like, help me, and they're able to help you. So I think there are tools out there. You don't need to go and speak to your friend or your sister. You can go speak to a professional or go speak to your creditors. It's an actual thing that people do. Yeah.
And I think people would think it's counterintuitive to spend money going to a financial planner that they don't have. But if this person can give you a picture, then maybe it's money worth, spending. Yeah. Johannes, I don't know if you have any ideas of why are we struggling to talk about this and what can people do?
I found Terence's word earlier, identity, really powerful. And I think it echoes what you said, Olivia. It's that we struggle with the shame of, I actually can't afford the X5 in the driveway. Or my kids are at St. John. Do you know how many families I know who find it incredibly hard to send their kids to private school? Do you think they can look at their friends at the dinner party and say, I'm making another choice? I've had that conversation in my boardroom. So the Afrikaans community in Joburg has it easy because there is a very quality Afrikaans government school. There are 2 of them in Linden. And a lot of people make the call, Geldenhuys is better than Jan Celia. The price difference is 100,000 rand per child per year. That's make or break money. So point 1 is this thing around identity. The other thing I would share is I have been positively amazed when clients, and many of them are in my peer group and having these pressures, have a braai and it's maybe 1 or 2 couples and they say, we're going to take our kids out of the school because it's actually quite expensive. And they'll come to me in our next meeting and they'll say, you will not believe it, but the other couple want to do the same thing and we can now talk about it. I think when you're vulnerable with people you trust about money, you're going to hear that they have the same things to wrestle. And it's probably quite encouraging to kind of support each other. So.
That's great. Anybody else want to add? I think I want to add, so off the back of what you've been saying, I found myself recently doing a bit of a life audit, but also a financial review from a deeper level and looking at how my consumption and the places where I put my energy, how those align with my values. And that's been a really interesting journey because I think, if we say, particularly if we are Christians, we come to church and we say, we value justice and we want to see good happening in the world, and we do that sitting in a T-shirt that was made by somebody who, didn't earn a decent income out of the work that they did. And we drive an SUV and we recently went on a holiday to a big American resort that completely exploited the community in which it was built. If we live lives that track a chain of production or of consumption that is exploitative and extractive from beginning to end, then do we really mean that we care about justice and we care about good and people, treated well? What are we spending our money on in the investments as well? So I was telling the group earlier, I have an investment with Coronation, and I made the mistake the other day of looking at at the details of the investment. At which point I discovered that the majority of the shares in that portfolio or in that fund are in British American Tobacco. And I am furious because there's no way that I can condone that. And I can understand it's a successful business, there's employment there, you know, there are jobs, they're doing well as a company, but I cannot condone supporting that industry. So what do I do, just little me, with my little investment? You know, how do I speak back to that? How do I speak back to companies who are just, you know, going about business in a way that I can't accept if I wanted to align to my values? Yeah, that's my thought.
There are fund options available. They're called ESG, and you've got to do a lot of work there. ESG can be a whitewash. They call it greenwashing, actually. You know, there are ESG funds that own BAT. But there are funds available. It's tough though because crime pays. You know, killing your customers and addicting them for life is quite a good philosophy to make money with. So often the ESG funds don't give good returns. It's a toughie. But there is a blooming industry there. And we find that younger investors care more about what they're invested in than how much money they make. It's fascinating.
That is interesting. I was going to ask if you're seeing a change in investment patterns. Are you? Yeah.
I mean, I've had one or two, they're small investors, but they're going to inherit a lot of money, say to me, I can't invest in that. And then you're sitting there going, well, you might not be able to retire, kiddo, because you're going to go backwards. And they genuinely don't care. A lot of work's also been done globally on how tech millionaires and tech billionaires will give away all their money immediately because they want to make a big difference. So there's a shift there, but I do want to underline that is a shift for the privileged 0.1%, and maybe not applicable. You need a solution that works.
Yeah, I think the issue of privilege is a moot one here, and we do always acknowledge that we live in two worlds, right? And a lot of people who are building their wealth on the backs of a heritage of wealth that was built for them. And I think sometimes we can be a bit smug about thinking that we created the wealth when...
I'm winding up here, but Terence?
Yeah,
No?
go for it.
Okay, so some compulsory reading for all South Africans, especially us white folks. There's a book called The Land is Ours by Tembeka Hukai-Tobi. It's about 300 pages. Skip the last 150. He's an academic and a law philosopher. But the first 150 pages are the history of land in this country. I've read the book twice. I'm getting goosebumps as I tell you about it. And I mean, the bottom line is that people lived here and owned land and shared land and worked land in the way that their culture and community understood. And then other people showed up, completely ignored that and took it. You can, you know, there's some detail there, but that is what happened. And your point about building our wealth on the backs of... I had a very telling conversation with a white friend who is now earning well, who comes from nothing. And I mean, he made his own way through university. His folks are broke and he's supporting them. He comes from nothing. And it was hard for him to understand that his parents could send him to a government school. He was born in '86, so he would have gone to school, what, early 90s to early 2000s? It was hard for him to understand that his horrible, I got bullied government school was a privilege. It was hard for him to understand that he could go to Rao on a bursary from an SOE and then go work at the SOE for 3 years, I think. He was very upset with me. I still haven't patched up the relationship because I said to him, but you're privileged. He struggled with that.
It's a big one that we have to deal with, yeah. I think I want to turn this around to the other side of the coin. So also looking at my investments, I had noticed some discussions on social media recently about investments and about how we need to dig a little bit deeper into what we're investing in, but also what is the detail of those investments. So for example, an admin fee on an investment of 1% can look like a tiny amount of money, but across the life of that investment, it can land up being hundreds of thousands of rand. And, you know, quite frankly, that investment house could charge 0.25% and still be rolling in cash. So for people who are working in the financial industry, who are selling products that they know are exploitative or they know are going to lessen the value of that investment over time. There's a bit of an information asymmetry that the financial industry, I believe, relies on. So as long as people don't ask too many questions and don't think too hard about it, then they can charge a 1% admin fee. So how do people who are ethical people or conscious people or people of faith, Christians specifically, who are working in industries, who are selling products like this, somebody who is at an insurance firm who's selling products that they know if anything went wrong, actually that wouldn't pay out nearly enough what the person needs. How do we make sense of this? And how does somebody align that with their values or their beliefs as a Christian?
I think it's a tough one if you are a financial advisor in the audience. I think if you are one, I think the integrity lies on your shoulders. I think God holds you accountable, how you deal with your clients in terms of your day-to-day business. And I think charging 1% now, it's a bit criminal because you can start paying 0.5% on investments, negotiable. And also bear in mind, as you as a client, it's their income, all right? So they need to earn a living as well. So maybe they're not thinking things carefully. Let me see Terrence tonight. I'm going to sign up on a policy. I want to make 10K. That's his income. He's got kids to send to school. He's got to put food on the table. So he's not really being a nasty kind of guy. Where I would encourage you is to actually read these policy documents, which in my time when I was doing this financial advising and planning, 99.9% of clients don't even read it. Terrence, where can I sign? I think I've got a trusting kind of face. But the question is, where can I? And that's what most people do. They just sign, even if it's full-on blank. It's illegal to sign a blank document now. But we still do it. If you did it, stop it. But please make sure, don't read a book. Read the document that you just received with a cup of coffee. Highlight areas that doesn't make sense to you. Things like the risk factor in this investment, the admin cost, the commission cost, and there's costs called sunrise cost. If these don't make sense to you, highlight them, pick up the call and say, can we meet again for coffee? I need you to explain some stuff. If he cannot answer you, change your advisor. Okay, that's just shooting straight from the hip. Never mind, he's born again, sanctified, saved. You think he's on his way to heaven? Change your advisor if he can't answer your questions. He should answer your questions. If it doesn't, he needs to tell you, I don't understand it. I will find out and come back to you. Give him a thumbs up for that. Okay, so it's very, very important that you understand the cost, things like fees. Tax is a big thing. Okay, don't ignore tax because I found clients where they put the wrong structure. You know, if you're a 18% tax bracket, you should be in a different type of fund or different type of investment. If you're a 45% tax bracket, you need to be put in another type of structure. I saw clients that were the other way about. The guy that was earning 45% was not put in the right structures. It means he's paying the full 45% in tax. So it's crucial you understand those different types of cost because it's important because that's the stuff that actually erodes your growth. It's a cost structure. My final comment, if you have an endowment, anybody knows what's an endowment product? Don't put your hand up. If you do have it, come and have a cup of coffee with me. If you don't have it, you should tear it up and burn it. That's the most expensive investment you could ever have in your life. Endowment products, it's a no-go zone if you want to create wealth. Okay? Simple philosophy. Investments, you deal with investment companies. Life insurance, you'll deal with life insurance companies. Doesn't make sense logically to do investments with a life insurer. Come on. It doesn't make sense. I don't know where people get the safety. Oh, mutual has been around for 180 years and the endowment is so good. They're just bluffing you. They just want your commission. Okay? Life insurance, life companies, investments, investment companies. Thank you.
That was power. I was going to make the point with less fervor, so well done. A very simple silver bullet that will separate the bluffers and salespeople and horrible things that are in my industry from quality oaks who are trying to do a good job. EAC, effective annual cost. Please, those of you taking notes, write that down. Effective annual cost. Why? If you ask your advisor or broker or salesman or wealth manager, what is the EAC? The good ones will sit you down and have a chat because it's a straightforward legal disclosure of the total cost of your investment forever. And it's binding, and there are all sorts of laws on what it must say. Anyone who can't answer that simply in a table, there's a prescribed legal table, walk away because they're bluffing or conning or stealing or selling. Okay, I'm done. EAC, in a table.
There we go. I think there's going to be lots of conversations after this session. Yeah. I think let's finish off the discussion section of the evening with some practical tips. So from each of you, 3 tips, 3 top tips that we can implement tomorrow to manage our finances more responsibly, and from each of your perspectives. I think we're aware now of where you're coming from. So for somebody in your stage of life or your area, what would your 3 top tips be? Should we start with you, Terence?
All right. Tip number 1 is look yourself in the mirror and come clean. All right. So what I'm saying is you need to have a plan in place. So that means get a budget done. If you have not done it, please, guys, do it. That holds you accountable. You can share that with a trusted friend so they can hold you accountable how you're doing this month. Okay? And the point on that is also to own your debt. If you create a debt, own it. There's a plan in place to come out of it. If you got into something, you always can get out of something. So own it, put a plan in place, and you can clear a debt. Please go through the following. Tonight, you got homework tonight, okay? When last have you checked your bank statement? Do you look at your bank statements? If you have not, please look at it. Okay, look at what's going through your bank account, what you're paying for. When I did this exercise way back in 2018, I was paying 1,720 odd rand, never knew for what. You know, the call center guys call you, you're busy in a meeting, they said, there's a scratch and dent thing. If you take it, it's only $60 a month. You know those calls? Yeah, little did I realize I had insurance on my car that covers the scratch and dent, but I had to take another one for scratch and dent. You know, we do this 35 rand, $60, $80. In the day, you're paying I was paying 1.7. Foolishness. So check your bank statements, read your policies, understand your policies, check your beneficiaries, guys. Check your beneficiaries, okay? I made a lot of clients who got remarried. Some of them passed on, and the ex was still on their policies. It's drama. Check it out. And my last point is I'm also very passionate about if you're married, if you've got assets, if you've got children, make sure you've got a valid will. Only 20% of South Africans have a valid will, and that is shocking. That does not exclude the church. Okay? We need to get our house in order. If you don't have a will, get one, especially if you've got minors. A testimony trust is so important to protect them. Otherwise, where do you think that money goes to? The Guardian Fund. The Guardian Fund is managed by our beautiful government. Thank you so much.
Just on budgeting, are there tools or resources that people can use to do a nice job there? In the
yes,
digital
I've got
age.
some beautiful tools, but it'll cost you. But because you're here tonight, we can sort you out. Only if you're here tonight. Don't send me your neighbors and your friends, colleagues' numbers. There's a budgeting tool and a debt tool that will help you deal with these kind of stuff.
Olivia.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to speak more to like young professionals and people who are in varsity, right? One is learn to say no. Big one. Learn to say no. Act like you don't have it. You know, if someone like, act like you don't have it. People will panic. People will lie. People will come up with all sorts of things to try and get what you have. But you need to think, I need to build myself. I need to build for my future. I need to build for my future generation. So learn to say no. Second thing is, I think, do therapy. Because a lot of our spending sometimes comes from pent-up poverty. And what that is if you were a child and you weren't able to buy McDonald's, jiggy, your first payslip, you were at McDonald's every day because of that pent-up poverty. It's a big thing. Some people never had furniture in their house, and their first time they're able to afford Uncle Joshua Do credit. You go there and you buy everything, even the speakers, everything. So you need to go to therapy, find out what your pent-up poverty is, because most of the time we spend, the Bible says where your treasure, your heart is, your treasure is. That's where your heart is, what you love, what you desire, when you were a child, you saw something, you're like, I want that. Why can't I have that? That's where your treasure will be, your treasure being your money. So do therapy or however way you can deal with that. And then lastly, trust God. There's power in that. There's power in committing, as cliche as it sounds. God still remains Jehovah Jireh. He still remains Abba Father. So trust him, even asking him, like, God, how? Teach me how to do this. Like, my parents never did this. I don't know, I'm lost, So trust him. I think, that's me.
Thank you. Claire, practical tips.
Practical tips would be for students and young 20-somethings. I would say, firstly, equip yourself with knowledge. I think financial literacy among my friends and people my age is so low. And so I'm sure there are amazing resources you can buy, but the free ones that I have used is the book. You can buy an online version. Managing your money like an adult. There's a 4-letter word left out there, but yeah, that was what set me up. Just trying to understand financial literacy would be taking risks as you're young. So for me, starting a business, I have the ability to do so right now. I don't have kids, I don't have a husband, and so risk it now. All those ideas are powerful, and so take the time and opportunity to do them now. And then finally, to not spend emotionally. So whether for other people or for yourself, don't spend emotionally, don't buy that polo, don't, be aggressively saving.
And as an entrepreneur, have there been any resources that you found that have been really helpful?
Many. I'm trying to think. Okay. So there is a lady, she's called the Financial Bunny. I know it's a very interesting name, but she is just amazing with individual financial literacy, and then small businesses starting out. What are the basics that you need to understand? So I would say going to her YouTube channel. I think she has a book now. Her name is Nicolette. So yeah.
They gave you the good stuff, guys. That was that thing about spending emotionally. Go to therapy. So I'm going to give you the mechanics of the engine. It's very, very simple and very, very hard. Spend less than you earn. Put the difference into a diversified, low-cost basket of equities. Don't go around with that other stuff like bonds and cash and property. Also save, because if you don't give yourself something today to enjoy your money, you're never going to appreciate what you build for the long term. So also save. And then, if you will, give me a fourth. Be consistent. If you want to look like Brad Pitt financially, you got to eat salad 6 days a week for the rest of your life. You can have cheeseburgers on Sunday, and you can have your wine, but if you're not consistent with this stuff, paycheck to paycheck, 40 years is 480 paychecks, guys. Go make a list in Excel 480 times long and start ticking. It goes quickly. Be consistent. Do the first 3 things, you'll be fine. You'll be more than fine.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you to our speakers for those insights. We're going to move to the questions section now. I've got 2 questions on Mentimeter so far. Maybe I can start with those, and then we'll take from the audience directly. So the first one is, can I use debt in a good way to manage cash flow?
Can I use debt? Yes, I think you can, in a good way. I think we must not view debt as there are bad debt and there's good. So, for example, if I was I'm in a business, and I go to Olivia to the bank and says, "Can you please give me R1 million because I will have this vision of building this business, employing more people, more machinery, and I envisage I'm going to get a growth on my investment." Then that's a good borrow, because your projected growth is enough to pay back, means you're not into debt. You're using the capital to grow. But if I take the R1 million, don't have any vision, don't plan, and it start to tank, then it's a bad, poor decision made. So credit cards are the same. It's good to use credit cards. It's easy, it's simple. But as long as you just keep paying it back regular, then you're fine. But once you mismanage it, it becomes a problem. So bad debt, good debt, yeah.
I think that's great, because often we can have a very black and white view, hey? Debt bad, whereas it can be a powerful tool if we harness it well. Yeah.
I've got two, if I may.
Go.
So Warren Ingram is a famous, brilliant financial planner, and he's written a few books, and he makes the point there are three kinds of debt. There's the really, really evil debt. It's called your credit card. If you cannot settle your credit card at the end of the month, you did something wrong. Greg, I haven't sworn once tonight. I want to say you fucked up. If you cannot pay your credit card at the end of the month, you've done something wrong, bad debt. In the middle, you get the debt you really don't have a choice about, which is probably your house and your car. Very few people can afford to pay that cash. That's okay, as long as you don't have a balloon installment, which is again like your credit card. You're buying something you can't afford. And then there's good debt, but for this, don't do heart surgery yourself, work with a professional. You can gear your assets. So you can borrow money to buy equity, etc. But do that with a professional. So debt's fine if it's the middle one or the last one. But the other stuff is just plain evil.
Good. Okay, next one. If you're considering making a big investment, timely, for example, in a solar system to beat load shedding for remote work and save against electricity hikes, but the once-off cost is hefty and might deplete your savings today, what should you choose?
I'm busy doing the spreadsheet for myself. I would classify that as the middle type. I don't see myself making money off the solar system, but I'd rather pay back my bond 2 odd grand a month than fork out the R250,000 up front. That $250,000 can go to equity. So I think as long as it's a manageable repayment term, your bond is probably the best place you can find it. Check for your rate, prime minus, prime plus, and yeah.
Anything else? Okay, next one. Is it a good idea to take out debt to invest in equities or low-cost index trackers? I think you've just touched on this.
You don't do open heart surgery. You don't do open heart surgery without a professional. You can do that, but work with someone.
Here's one. How do we save that which is insufficient? Is the saving rationale realistic to those whose earnings are far less than what they need to reach the next payday?
Sure. Okay. I do think that saving, for some, they consider it a luxury. They've downgraded, everything, everywhere, and it is what it is. The situation is what it is. I think in such situations, the best thing you can do for yourself is seek out to increase your streams of income. That's the best thing you can do for yourself. Is if you're unable to save, there's no place else to go. I know that there are a lot of jobs on Indeed if you need help, whoever asked this question, you can definitely chat to me. I know how to apply for jobs, which will, obviously, you might be sleeping at 1 a.m. And I'm speaking from a place where I've done this before, or my little sisters have done this before, where they'll sleep at 1 a.m. because they're doing extra jobs that gives them about 2K a week. Or my other sister was getting $17.5 or $1,000 a month. This is an extra job where she started at 4 and she was just sleeping at 12 every day. So sometimes you just need to do research. There's stuff out there for, there are opportunities out there. And the same way, if you know of something, also don't be, selfish. Let people know about it. So if there's anyone who, keen on like extra jobs, you have time, especially between US time. So like 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. So like midnight, please do come chat to me, or maybe I'll send you guys some resources on how to apply for these jobs, because they're hiring and people are working and making money, and it's simple jobs. So yeah, I think the best way, when you've done all you can and there's nothing left, and saving has become a luxury, I think next best thing is to try and increase your chances of getting more income. Yeah.
Sorry, if I can just comment there. I think everybody has time. Okay, if you're working 6 to 6, you still have time. I think it just depends how hungry you are to sort your financial situation out. At one point, I was doing 3 jobs. 2 boys, raising them up, okay, get them to school, pick them up from school, prepare dinner, do the washing, the old stuff. So if you're really desperate and you're really serious and committed to either create wealth or come out of a debt cycle, you've got to be committed to that call. You've got to make a decision. I've been working with about 8 people in the past sort of 6 months. Same conversation. Can't come out of it. About 3 of them were young sort of couples. Worked through the system. And now they're working. They come home. So that 6 to 8 is sorting out the home. 8 to 11, not watching Netflix, working on their business. Okay, marketing themselves, putting themselves out there, working on a Saturday. You've got to go through the process. It's no quick fix. Okay, and it's sad, I never used the language before, but I think we're growing up in a microwave generation. Now we pop in there money and think it explodes at R1,000,000. No, you got to work for it. Okay, it calls that commitment. Strategize, plan, and you have to do multiple streams of income. If we've made bad financial decisions, you've got to pay the price now to come out of it.
Good. Okay, those are the questions that I have on Menti. So can we turn it to the room? Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask?
Okay, thank you. Mine is just a simple one. We had a budget speed yesterday. What is your highlights and what is your takeoffs that you can share with us today?
Yeah, the one that stuck out for me was, the pass, the get out of jail pass that Eskom got. So I think I'm still there. I hope it's a good thing for, I think they got off about 300 billion rand. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing for me. And obviously your sin taxes, that's something we always look at. But yeah, a big one for me. It's kind of made me a bit hopeful for the months to come. So yeah, that was a big one for me. Yeah.
Why hopeful?
Hey, I'm just a hopeful person.
Eskom has been bailed out.
It sounds like they've been bailed out of something. So we'll see. It's not too hopeful. So still, yeah.
So, for my sins, I am an optimist. And I actually read the speech every year. I download it. And sometimes I read all the annexures you probably read professionally. And what struck me, guys, is National Treasury is a world-class team. Yes, they are crack people. If you read what they say about we shouldn't spend more than we earn. I mean, we are running, there's this technical term, you would know it, I don't. The amount of money government spends, excluding paying debt. Primary budget, they're going to run a primary surplus this year for the first time since 2008. You might recall that in 2008, we were like a world-class economy run by 3 world-class economists. So they are living what we would think are good values. They are spending less than they're getting in on the primary budget. But they can't help the fact that the last 2008 to now is 14, 15, 16 years. Mommy and daddy have been spending on the credit card, and now they're in National Treasury and they've got to pay back that bill. The other one is there's a line in the budget, and I only read it twice last night, and I haven't gone back to it, but when he announces the Eskom debt takeover, I think it's 256 plus other money. He tells you that the debt to GDP ratio over the next, he talks about the medium term, I think that's 3 to 5 years, will be less than he planned. So we're bailing out Eskom. Shot. I take that point. We are also doing it and having less debt overall. How are we doing that? Government is running a primary budget surplus. They're spending less. And it may not work, and there are many people with many opinions, but the fact that National Treasury does this, yes, we can have some faith in that department at least. They are very good.
Great. Any more questions? None. Okay. Closing thoughts, or closing words.
Closing words. All right. On my side, there are 3 groups of people. You're either the lower end, and you've challenged the middle class. So the lower class basically works to pay off debt. You don't want to be in that space. The middle class is trying to get a good score rating. Okay, that's all they do. How can I buy another car, another house, or what? Trying to get a good credit score so we can borrow. And the third class is how do I create more wealth? And I hope today that you'll walk away that I'll be a creator of wealth, not the lower or the middle class. That space you don't want to be. And one final thought, when we went through this crisis, Paul, if you go back 10, 12 years, the lower end of the market of people can't go anywhere in the world. They're stuck. The middle class is flying out of here like crazy, setting up and flying. The guys on the top, they're just chilling, sipping pina colada. You fly, I'm buying your business, I've got the money because you're selling at a cost price. That's what they're doing, buying up houses, buying up business because they had the money to do that. The wealthy will stay. They're not going nowhere. This is prime place for them. This is investments for them. So they're not leaving. Middle class people are going to give them the buying power. So try and select your class, drive toward that because you will win. Set your mind and you will win. You will fly, no matter the challenges.
Who's next? Oh, okay. My parting thought is invest in early childhood development. Best investment you can make.
There's a book, sorry, I'm in a storytelling mood, give me 3 minutes. There's a book in the US called Don't Live Like a Millionaire, Be One. Just reflect on that title, Don't Live Like a Millionaire, Be One. And the background, I'm on 120 seconds, stick with me, is some wealthy wealth managers in the States went and found 2 PhDs and gave them a hell of a lot of money to understand how they can market product to rich people. So they rent a penthouse in the Ritz with a sushi chef and a champagne bar. And they place ads. And when the 17th candidate did not touch the sushi or the champagne, they knew something was wrong. So they asked the 18th candidate, what would you like to drink? And he said, a beer. They brought him the menu, and he said, I can't order off this menu. I'm going to go to the corner store and buy 6 beers. I'll be back. And he came back with the 6 beers. That person was worth $10 million in 2000. And then they tell you these stories about people who have made fantastic wealth, living simply. They generally are all married for a long period of time, live in the same house for multiple decades, and drive a car that's more than 10 years old. These are people who are worth 200 million rand plus. There's the data. That's how you do it.
What's my final things? I would say, yeah, equip yourself with financial literacy and knowledge, and don't be afraid to network. I think that's what I've also learned is don't be afraid to network with your friends, with your family. yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Val to do the closing. This has been an amazing discussion. I think you've all really enjoyed it. Can we give our speakers a round of applause?